Namaste, my friend. Welcome to the Happy Jack Yoga Podcast. I'm Happy Jack, live from Muskoka, Ontario, Canada. And I'm live here with.
Happy Hannah and happy Coco, my little dog that you can hear always kind of breathing at the rhythm of our podcast episodes.
Yes. And for those who are tuning in either on Spotify or on Apple, we actually just finished a beautiful satsang conversation with His Holiness Radhanath Swami. And so that will be available on another link. But it was just a beautiful opportunity to come together in community, to be reminded of the importance. It was so helpful for me, Hanna, to be reminded of why we're going to India, why we go there every year. Because, truthfully, we can get caught up in the logistics, organizing the flights and the transportation and all of the details. And just to really get to the essence, what is it that we're seeking? What is it that we're yearning for? And so what we're doing here with the community this month is reading The Journey Home together or listening to the audiobook. And it's just a beautiful opportunity to come together and to ask questions and to seek. And what is on your heart, Hannah? Now that we give you a microphone, we just got to spend the past hour with Radhanath Swami. What is on your heart?
I feel really emotional and grateful. I think this is like we often talk about association, or you often talk about association when you spend time with people who inspire you spiritually, and there's just a different energy to the conversations, and it makes me deeply emotional and grateful to to life that we get to be on this pilgrimage together. And Radhanath Swami was talking about the pilgrimage also being an internal one and one that we can take from home. So for those who cannot join on that type of pilgrimage to the other side of the world, there's so much we can still seek and find through our being with inspiring people and seeing what forms spirituality can take and how it can expand us and help us surrender.
Mm.
And I know all of these words are really kind of conceptual and abstract, but when we spend time with inspiring seekers, we might have the experience that Radhanath Swami was talking about that is internal, that it becomes one's own experience versus the abstraction of the words of all of these high and mighty concepts that can be a little bit intimidating. And there was a beautiful question that was asked during the call from Sue in Canada about asking, what can we do if we can't travel and go on pilgrimage? Because the book we're reading this week is an extraordinary hero's journey. Like someone that was saying it was, kind of like an action movie, a spiritual action movie. So courageous. And most of us won't maybe have that type of courage, or we might not give ourselves permission to really seek to the level that Radhanath Swami did. However, what he finds inspires us, and we can have our own version of that. We can have our own version of being on a pilgrimage through life and asking ourselves, do I see this speech or this podcast or this moment through the lens of my heart? Or, can I be available to the essence of each moment? And maybe the pilgrimage is a moment where we can surrender to seeing through our hearts. Whereas everyday life, like you said, Jack, we have all kinds of practical things we need to take care of for the journey. We need to book the flights and get through the e-visa hurdles that are difficult because the website might crash or we might not know the answers to all the questions. And we could focus a lot on that, on the external things. But then I think what's beautiful about the perspective of being on a pilgrimage is that if we can be available to these heightened moments, like when we come together as seekers and we listen to the wisdom of someone who's been on the pilgrimage their whole life, very humbly. And then if we can receive that in our hearts and let us be moved by it and see how it applies to the context that we are in. So
Yeah,
that's what's on my heart. Just a lot of gratitude.
I love that. Yeah, there's so much that you shared, and you began with association. And I've shared, I'm back home now here in Canada, which I love. In fact, I can hear an echo. My parents are downstairs listening to the podcast right now. I can hear the Zoom about 5 seconds behind us. And as I've shared many times with the community, like I'm so grateful to be back home here in Canada, to be back home here with family, in the nature, and it's home. And at the same time, there's simultaneously a yearning to return back to Mother India, to return back to Govardhan Eco Village. There's something about the association with these seekers and beautiful souls who are there truly to serve and to be in community and to really take their spiritual life seriously. So there's this power in who we spend time with. And we're so grateful, for all of you who are here with us live, weekly on the podcast, and those who are, members of the community. We get to be in community on this journey. And I love what you highlighted and what Radhanath Swami shared with Sue, is that really the journey is within, because, well, I don't know 15 years ago, I quit John Deere and took a one-way flight to India. It was not as eventful as Radhanath Swami's, but sometimes some of us make a journey like that. And at the same time, it's not required. Like those some transformations, some insights come from it, but really it's an internal practice, an internal work. And I love that, sitting, right here at my little home, my little space in Canada. I can wake up early. You know me. It's like living in a boot camp. 4:30 in the morning, wake up, do my asana, do my meditation, do the different rituals, and it really can be done wherever we are. Sometimes we think, oh, if only I could change my career, then I could, get my life in order. Or if I could only move to a different city, if I could only be in a different relationship. Sometimes we think the grass is greener on the other side. And yet the common denominator is always us. And so wherever we go, there we are. And I just love that reminder for Sue and for all of us, really, that, and as he said to Sue, when we are in India, and we'll be going live on Zoom while we're in India, and when we return from India and we're sharing our experiences, and Sarah and George and all of the others who are here, as they share their experiences, as Sue and all of us hear those stories, we get to be inspired. We get to be, just called and brought in on the journey home.
Just
So
like we have been right now with the presence of Radhanath Swami, we were taken into his adventure that has lasted many lifetimes, it seems. There's so many twists and turns. And yes, we can read the book, but then when we receive the insights and the things that speak to our heart from his journey, then that's inspiring. That's something that might advance us on our search on how this applies to me and the circumstances that I was given in this lifetime. And I love how he quoted Lord Jesus, as he said, in that the statement that Jesus said, how when we seek, we shall find. And it is so true. If we are willing to open our hearts to the seeking,
yeah,
seeking the essence of this wisdom tradition and how that applies to who I am. Like, what can I muster to make out of this on my heart level?
Yeah, it's so true. I love that the idea of what we seek, what we're looking for, what we put our focus on
Mm.
is what we find. It's what we end up, discovering. And that the first time when I went to India, and many people in my life thought I was crazy, to quit a corporate career and to just take a one-way flight. And there were concerns raised, like it's unsafe, or it's dirty, there's you might see dead people, you'll see poverty, these kind of things that are shown in the news, right, are highlighted in the news, unfortunately. And so that's what sometimes people might think of, like taking a journey to the other side of the world. And yet, thankfully, I went with a different perspective and found the most beautiful people, the best food in the world, the nicest people in the world, the most beautiful, rich culture. And I think it's really what it is that we're focusing on, where we put our attention is what we end up discovering. And so it's just a great reminder, keep the news off, or to a minimum, and be in association with beautiful souls like this, and really choose, like, what is and I love what Radhanath Swami was saying as well about, if we go to India or Mexico or anywhere on a vacation, then what we'll have is a vacation. And if we go there to relieve ourselves of the stress or of the burdens, then maybe that's what we'll get. We'll get to relieve some stress. But if we really go there, like with a hunger and a yearning to seek the truth, to seek something greater than ourselves, and regardless of how smooth it is, and but I will say, if you just plop down in Delhi and explore on your own, it might be a bit out of your comfort zone. But actually, going to Govardhan Eco Village is a very soft landing for us Westerners to come into India. And even if things don't go perfectly smooth with the e-visa process or with a flight or something, truly trusting that's part of the journey, right? It's not that, oh, when we get there to Govardhan Eco Village, okay, I made it, ta-da, it's over. It's the whole journey, the preparation, the anticipation as we get ready to go. And then long after our time there as well. And the same goes with the journey home, right? That we can have those experiences along the way. So just so many great insights.
Yeah. So the journey home here, Jack, to those who are not seeing us, he means the book that we are reading this month in preparation for our trip to India. And everyone's welcome to join our book club that we do in September. We'll meet once a week to discuss what we found in the book, and to share what we find through reading the book. And that's a type of pilgrimage as well.
Yeah. And we're excited to do something different in that way. So for those who are members of the community, you'll know that each month we have a different 25-hour Yoga Alliance certification. And we might be doing restorative yoga, or an Ayurveda training, or the trauma-informed yoga. And those are beautiful and beautiful tools. And we decided to do something different and do a book study. And essentially, so for those who love to read, can get a copy. And by the way, everybody who's coming to India will receive a copy of The Journey Home. And anyways, the audiobook is available on YouTube.
And it's amazing. The audiobook is, I think, an adventure of its own. So beautifully made with music, and Radhanath Swami himself reading it I find it is amazing. And it can be found on YouTube and on all the book platforms. Highly recommend listening. Yeah.
Yeah. So please do join for that. Another thing that stood out that Radhanath Swami shared was this idea that, as for those who have read the book or who are reading the book, he meets so many incredible teachers who he has so much respect for, incredible yogis, incredible gurus, incredible teachers, and who are very committed to a particular tradition, a particular set of practices, a particular path. And I love what he said is those who who, and there's no rush, but those who eventually find a path that feels ultimately resonates and really go deeper in one path versus in the beginning, it's helpful to experience. We have a Buddhist psychology and mindfulness course here at Happy Jack Yoga University, right? It's really helpful to learn, from the different traditions, and then ultimately, choosing one to go deep in. And I know for me, I took my time. I had a lot of questions, a lot of uncertainties and skepticisms, and but I'm now finding it very helpful, to commit to a path, to go deep into a path. And it doesn't mean that we do anything blindly still, but really giving ourselves fully. This idea of surrender, this idea of, I'm this feels right. And I love the idea, what I've been encouraged in the Bhakti yoga community is this idea to ask a lot of questions. So there's no blind acceptance, no blind faith, also no blind denial, but this idea of just being able to ask questions and continuously be in inquiry. And I've met people who are on this path for 50 years, God brothers of Radhanath Swami, and they sincerely say, if I find another path that genuinely feels like, actually, this is what's meant for me, they're open and willing to make the shift. Probably unlikely that would happen at this stage, but just this idea of just like open heart and at the same time sincerely committing to a particular practice.
Yeah,
Really,
to me, that sounds like a faith that is very much alive, like
yeah.
lived through the different stages of our lives and our spiritual journey. When I hear this a lot in the Bhakti tradition, that there's a lot of reading and studying and asking questions and finding answers and helping each other along the way. That's why I think perhaps one of the reasons why it is so much about the association, because the faith of the God brothers and sisters is so inspiring that it almost like it has an impact on your own essence and your own journey.
Yeah, it really does. And at the same time, this is something I'm reminded of because I was just saying how I love being back home here in Canada. And in one way, I'm secluded, from those who are, in my physical presence, who are practicing bhakti yoga or on this spiritual path. And yet we can still have the association of great souls through reading, through listening to lectures, through online sangha, online association like this. So it's, again, we can focus on like, oh, I'm live in this part. I live in the middle of nowhere. I don't have a nice yoga community in the area. But actually, when we get resourceful and start, using books and online resources in the community, we can actually have this association. We have it right now. I'm seeing beautiful souls. We got Sue, Sarah, we got Rita in South Africa. We got our brother Jim. We got beautiful souls all around the world. Pam in New Mexico, and being able to be on this journey together. And this. I love this idea of the journey home. And we get to endeavor in this together.
Yeah, that is, yeah, so beautiful. And what would you say now you've been on this yoga path for quite many years, to those who are new? Because oftentimes we associate with yogis who've been on the path longer than us, but how about like for you who still are new to this type of yoga path, what would you say has changed, or how has it impacted you? I know we've discussed this on the podcast other times, but as of today, what have you found? Like, why did you choose this path?
That's a great question. I would say, what I've found is I've just been inspired by others who are on this path. And when I went to Govardhan Eco Village in India and just seeing, as I mentioned on the last call, medical doctors and MBAs and lawyers and engineers, these people who had successful careers, could renounce, like give everything up and move to an ashram and live a life of service and live a life of devotion, and to see the end, because I know people with those careers who are still in those careers, and I think about like how happy my friends are in the corporate world, and there's nothing wrong with the corporate world, but I'm just saying, versus when I'm meeting these people who have completely dedicated their lives to the path of bhakti, and just seeing just the qualities that they have, the humility, the sincerity, the tolerance, all these ways when I would get triggered or react, or I just see that the beautiful qualities that they've developed. And so I'm so inspired by them. And as I've as an experiment, initially as an experiment, trying out this sadhana, these practices, and being in this association, starting to notice it had those effects on me as well. Even Hanna, you've noticed, family members have noticed. There's it's a subtle shift, and of course we're not doing it for other people. We're not doing it for any validation. It's really just like this inner knowing. And even though I don't fully have a clear vision of exactly some next big steps in life, it feels right to wake up early and to do this sadhana, to do these spiritual practices, and to regularly be in community with all of you, and to engage in these conversations, and to live a life devoted to others. I earlier in life was more self-centered, and to now wake up, and we get to do that together, Hannah. We get to wake up and think, how can we contribute? What can we create? What can we share? And it's far more fulfilling. And again, we're just getting started in a sense, right? It's just this past 5 years, but it feels right. And I think just being in the association of someone like Radhanath Swami is such a great reminder of what's possible. And again, we're not here to compare, right? Because many of us are not going to have the eventful journey that he went on, hitchhiking from London to India, but we get to go on our own journey home, and that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's like everyone is on their own journey, on their own individual pilgrimage, and we walk side by side, and sometimes inspired by each other, or someone who went before us can show us the way, and the way they show it is through what inspires us about their way of being in the world. Like you were sharing about the people who live a life of service that you've met in India and elsewhere, how their example inspires us and makes it almost like possible for us to then, if it feels right, to ask, how can I live a life of service? And that can sound like a very like high and mighty a goal or idea, but what would it look like for me to do that without it being tipping over to self-sacrifice, or where it, what is healthy, what is not healthy? Because if there's a lot of self-sacrifice, I wonder if it then doesn't become sustainable to live a life of service. So for each of us, that what that looks like and entails might be individual, but and I find like as Happy Jack Yoga too, like we need to, because there's really just the two of us, and behind the scenes of Happy Jack Yoga, and sometimes we evaluate how much is it possible for us to take on, and then what is the right way to engage the projects that we create. And I think both of us, our goal is to be of service and have, be of service. And I think that's what yoga for most of us, if you take a yoga teacher training, I find that yes, there's going to be an exchange for your time. Typically you get paid, or it's some kind of an arrangement where you get to use the room or use the space to teach, and you learn so much in the process about yourself, how you respond to being in charge and what does it really mean? Can you be guided as you teach? There's a lot of topics that come up, but I think taking a teacher training for many of us oftentimes can be the step, like outside of being in the service of our families, because that will often be natural and biological. We'll take care of our loved ones typically. But when we step into the role of a yoga teacher, we open to being of service to people we might not know, who we might have not otherwise met had we not got a slot in a yoga studio or invented an event at a local church where we teach yoga. And we start, for me at least, that was my experience, like the bubble of me having to kind of just manage my life bursted, and I felt like I was connected to possibly anyone randomly on this planet, because they could walk into my class and I would then do my best to be of service to them, because I think moving is good for them, and because yoga is a vibrational practice. It is something that changes and opens, hopefully, our heart and our essence to the deeper questions that we maybe not don't have time for in our daily lives. And a lot of us don't identify as religious, or we don't know which wisdom tradition we really subscribe to. And so yoga oftentimes becomes this soil where we have the time to breathe and open up for our own spiritual search. And we might not think about that when we go to our yoga classes first, but it seems to be what happens to a lot of yogis. Like, it's a little bit like what Radhanath Swami was saying. Like, if you go to a country as a tourist, you'll have a touristic experience. If you go to a yoga class for the workout, you'll have a workout. But I find that behind the scenes, yoga or spirit or God and goddess are working on us, and there might be a subtle shift, and we might deepen the wisdom tradition that we were born in, or we might look elsewhere or have both. That's possible as well. But it's what the question is, like, how do I live my life being of service in a way that is sustainable, so I don't then get mad because now I'm here of service and now I'm getting tired and it's costing us. And how much can we take on, and how can we stay nourished? What does it take? And maybe, what do you do in your life? Do you ever get depleted? Or I know you've had lots of overwhelm, because you too, Jack, like just personally through Harvard and the Bhakti Yoga Conference, you've taken on a lot. And how do you balance that?
Yeah, it's a good question. And first, I just want to say, this idea of being of service.
Now your internet went out, I think, Jack. Maybe you have to hop on your other computer. I know Jack has his other computer should be available, so he'll be back in a couple of minutes. But yeah, the question for all of us, how much can we take on, and what is it that makes our practice and our service sustainable? There's Happy Jack. I'm gonna replace you to the spotlight and then add myself. Yeah, go ahead, Jack. You need to be unmute.
Nice.
No?
Oh, thank you. I'm back. We thought that might happen, where the power might flicker. Because it's been happening here, but we're back in business. I was just starting to say, in a society, in a world where it really is about, like, what can I get? What's in it for me? I mean, we're even taught to market that way, to speak, because people are, whether they know it consciously or unconsciously, are curious, like, what's in it for me? What can I get? And unfortunately, many of us are conditioned that way for much of our lives. And so this is like radically turning it on its head and being like, what can I give? What can we contribute? How can we serve? And it was a big shift. And so to your question, Hanna, about you know, how do we know is how much is the right amount, and can we give too much? You know, it's so we had one beautiful experience, and that was with the Bhakti Yoga Conference. And you know, many who are here were a part of that. And I feel like that was an opportunity where, you know, we truly just wanted to bring all of the spiritual teachers that have inspired us over the past, you know, few years, and to share them with our community. And so there was no intention, there was no what's in it for me. It's like, let's find all the greatest teachers, the greatest spiritual leaders, the most beautiful souls that we've met, bring them into this platform and share them with our community. And I guess we probably, because we were new, didn't really see it as like, oh, we're doing some service. We just it was just inspired. You're on mute.
It was your final project. It
Yeah.
started with being your final project at Harvard, and then you decided to bring in everyone first. The first version of it was that you bring all of the spiritual teachers to the conference that have had an impact on you spiritually and otherwise, right?
Yeah, that's how it started exactly. And so I guess there was that, you know, initial, it was a fulfilling a degree requirement, but then it just it blossomed from there. And I feel like actually, truthfully, because Radhanath Swami was so gratefully said yes, and then so many other renowned speakers also were willing to give their time and their presence, and it really it became something beautiful that we couldn't have really planned for. And you know, as you pointed out, how do we know when we're kind of giving too much or we're pushing ourselves too far? Like in one way, that was the most fulfilling and most rewarding. It was so nourishing to like every day or twice a day for 6 weeks to be able to be here in a Zoom like this and being able to just receive the wisdom of these beautiful souls. It was so nourishing. And towards the end, you know, with the live event, it also between studies and Happy Jack Yoga and this project, you know, I did, it was physically depleting as well. So it's, I suppose it's finding the balance of, you know, knowing our nature, knowing our limits, knowing what we're capable of. And I feel like, at least for me, maybe it's because I'm a Libra and it's kind of all about balance. But it's like sometimes I need to go a little bit too far on one side to realize, oh yeah, that's why, you know, that's why I, you know, do these things, or that's why I have this particular lifestyle, and be reminded to come back to the path.
Mm, yeah. So it is a little bit kind of based on knowing oneself and then tending to that. Like, yes, sometimes things do cost more than we have in terms of energy and input, and then we might rest and digest later. And maybe next time when we plan the 2026 Bhakti Yoga conference, we'll see how to create it in a way that is, you know, an improved next version of it that is also, you know, you'll have a better idea because you've done it once. We've done it once.
Mm.
And then we learn by doing. And
Yeah.
I think what you also mentioned there, like when we do service, that alone is fulfilling, extremely fulfilling. Like if you've ever volunteered at, I don't know, where they receive refuges, or in an animal shelter, or maybe you've taught yoga somewhere as a volunteering thing, maybe like you said, the Bhakti Yoga conference, like when you do it as a service, there's this element that it fulfills you in a different way than just doing your duty. Like
Mm.
the act of volunteering or being of service with that attitude, they say it's like one of the mental health game changers, number one. If you struggle with, you know, how we talk often about like emptiness or the loneliness pandemic or isolation that happens in our societies now, first of all, to get a pet, but second of all, to go and volunteer because it's deeply fulfilling when our lives mattered in the way that we contribute. Like it's almost like we have this innate wish to be of service,
Mm.
right? To be, um, you know, of impact in a positive way to others.
Yeah.
And that
And
could look different for each of us, like what that entails. If you are allergic to cats, maybe you not want to work at an animal shelter that works with cats. But, you know, there's something in your heart that yearns to contribute. Maybe it's with, I don't know, at a local hospice or a kindergarten. I don't know. We all have a maybe different arenas where it would feel deeply meaningful, maybe a spiritual setting.
mhm. Yeah, and I feel like also coming back to I look there's Sarah and her cat. I love it. This idea of because you asked the question of like how to be of service and how to contribute and give without depleting ourselves. And I think something I've been learning, and it comes back to what Radhanath Swami shared, is the power of association, the
Mm-hmm.
importance of association. And so we did, we did with a small but mighty team, we did the Bhakti Yoga Conference, and it certainly took a team of us. And I think as we think about next year, and we actually have bigger plans, won't reveal all the details now, but we have even bigger, exciting ideas for it. And so the way to make it more sustainable and just nourishing or doable is to collaborate with a greater team and to engage more people in this program. And so that's what, really understanding again, what is our strengths? What is it that nourishes us? Where do we, right? Because not everybody needs to be in the kitchen, right? Hannah, I'm not the most competent in the kitchen, but I can contribute in other areas. So it's like, well, let's get the right people in the right seats working, doing the right seva, and then everybody is like so inspired by their role, and it comes together seamlessly, or at least in a beautiful way through collaboration. So that's one thing that we're very excited about. Just that idea of, because that was the greatest gift when you came along, Hanna, right? Before, the first few years, Happy Jack Yoga was kind of just me with a backpack and a guitar. And, we did some cool things, but then when you came into the picture, we've been able to do so much more to really create this global community and this yoga teacher training school, and to bring a balanced presence and there's just on and on, so many beautiful things. So there's like these reminders, but yet somehow, whatever my karma, my conditioning, my past lives, I have this kind of sometimes tendency to want to just just accomplish things through hard work, and sometimes just do it by myself. That's the easiest way or the best way. And thankfully, we get these reminders of how much more not just effective it can be, but enjoyable, and it's a gift. I think I've seen it by like asking help for other people. It's almost like hard to ask for help. I feel it as like, I don't want to trouble you. I'm like, we're kind of us Canadians are kind of kind, and we don't want to intrude. But actually engaging people in seva is it's a beautiful opportunity. It's a beautiful, so it's not like a burden to ask for help. And so we know that, like in the world of mental health, right? You work as a yoga psychotherapist, right? The importance of being able to raise our hand when we're struggling, and to be able to seek guidance, to be able to be honest and to be real, and just so much love and respect for the community who shows up consistently and so authentically and openly and vulnerably. And so I feel like if we can bring those qualities into our seva, into our work as well, this idea of having a spiritual foundation with our sadhana, our practices, doing it in association with beautiful souls and seekers on the path, and this idea of seva, being able to really see it as an offering and as a service, And these are some of the pillars of bhakti yoga, and truthfully, the pillars of many wisdom traditions, right? We're going to see it in Christianity. We're going to see similarities in Buddhism and etc. So yeah, it's just beautiful to learn this. It's, truthfully, we're learning, but we get to learn together and to learn. There's the idea of falling forward. We're going to fall down. We're going to make mistakes. We do it. We have misses, but this idea of falling forward, right? Get back, and you're just kind of always making progress, one foot in front of the other, doing our best as we journey home.
Yeah, I love that. That is so true. We don't have to do it alone. We don't have to do life alone. We don't have to do our seva alone. We don't have to do our spiritual seeking alone. And there's such power in that. And it's true that maybe it's easy to forget that we can ask for help. And sometimes that can feel a bit risky because then it becomes another job. You have to manage the persons you asked for help from, and you have to know what you're asking for so that they have a chance to contribute, or knowing who and what is the right person in the right seat. But we can only find if we seek.
Yeah. And that's why, again, for those who are just getting into the journey home, the book, as the incredible people that Radhanath Swami met on his journey. And, there are many yogis who lived a very austere, a very disciplined life in the Himalayan mountains. And I think maybe the first time that I went to India in 2012, that I was maybe thinking that was the path. And I ended up in Rishikesh and was, inspired by the Hatha yoga and inspired by a yogi who was living in a cave, had been there for 14 years. And somehow, being inspired by that discipline, and so beautiful, like that's a beautiful quality. But I think, many of us kind of wake up to, well, that's first of all, that's not so practical for most of us, right? To give up our lives, to give up our responsibilities and just go meditate in a cave. But then even beyond this idea of, if we think about great contributors, great spiritual seekers like Mother Teresa, right? Or Gandhi, and the way that they engaged with the world. So it wasn't about going to a cave and working on themselves and, on a path to divinity, but rather be able to engage with the world and to make a contribution. And yeah, I mean, that's what we see. That's who we're inspired by now. And we're, as I look around and see the beautiful souls here and the yoga communities we got in Alabama with our dear friend Cece, and yoga communities we have truthfully all around the world, everybody in their own authentic way of thinking like, hey, I've been touched, I've been inspired by these particular yogis, these seekers, and now in our own authentic way, sharing it with our community. And I guess we can just do the best we can, inspired one foot in front of the other.
Yeah. And it's like we will discover what the next step is by taking the first step. Like all of the different stages will reveal themselves as we embark on our journey.
Yeah, and that's it. And so we get to, for the whole month of September, we get to be on the journey home together. So again, if you're listening to the podcast on Spotify or on Apple, send us an email, info@happyjackyoga.com, if you'd love to get looped in and be on this journey home with us. And of course, if you'd love to join us in Mother India in November 9 through 16, we'd obviously love to welcome you. And but just thank you for being on this journey with us, to being here. And thank you to Radhanath Swami, who's still been listening in on the call here and been continuing on the journey with us. But really wishing you all an amazing rest of the day. And of course, those who are members of the community, tomorrow, Wednesdays, we've got live yoga. Thursdays, we've got business of yoga and leadership mentoring. Sundays, we have our community satsang, sharing circle. We have our spiritual growth call, and we have our 200-hour yoga teacher training. And then, of course, on Tuesdays, we've got the Journey Home book study and the podcast. So there's no shortage of associations. Grab a book, grab an audio lecture, hop in a Zoom call with us, and just thank you for being on the journey. Thank you, Hanna, for being co-creating this community together. It's such an honor.
Thank you. Thank you so much for everything that you pour into Happy Jack Yoga and the community.
Well, until we meet again, we're sending our love. Huge shout outs. Radhanath Swami, Sue, we got Rita over in South Africa. We got Sarah, Team UK. We got CC, Sweet Home, Alabama. We got Jim here, Team Canada. Oh, so many other beautiful souls. Jaimala. We got Kevin. We got Gauri Priya Devidasi. Beautiful smile to see you. No way. We got Pankaj Gopal Prabhu. Oh, so beautiful to see you, brother. Nitya Leela. Oh my goodness. Canadian God sister living down in the States. We got Dinesh Chandar and so many other beautiful souls. Lorna over in Portugal, and beautiful souls around the world. But thank you for being here with us as we continue the journey home. Many of you will see next week, next Tuesday. Some of you will see in Mother India. And until we meet again, wishing you an amazing rest of the day. Namaste.
Namaste.